Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. Don't forget to support the channel by liking and subscribing. In this video we're going to look at a range of specialised animal cells that you will come across in your GCSE or IGCSE biology course. Cells like the ciliated epithelial cell that you can see here. There we go, there's the outline of it and the range of cilia that we have at the top. These are found in the trachea. So by the end of today, you'll be able to explain how specialised cells are adapted to their function for a range of examples. And here's our first example, red blood cells. Now, red blood cells have a simple function, and that's to carry oxygen around the body. In order to be able to do this well, they are well adapted. They have hemoglobin to carry the oxygen. Hemoglobin is a protein that actually bonds to the oxygen molecule in the lungs, but it can then release the oxygen molecule when there's a low concentration in the area, for example in the muscle cells where the oxygen is needed for respiration. To help carry as much oxygen as possible, red blood cells have no nucleus and therefore no DNA, and that means they can pack in as much hemoglobin as possible and carry a large amount of oxygen. Red blood cells also have a biconcave disc shape. This is almost like a sort of a donut shape where you squash the donut in. This gives them a large surface area to volume ratio, so oxygen can diffuse in and out of the cell more quickly. The second cells on our list are a group of cells that work together in the trachea and in the bronchi of the lungs. Their function is to remove dirt and bacteria. So how do these two cells work together? Well, the first cell to consider is this cell here, which looks a little bit strange. If I were to draw it out standing up in a simpler form, it almost looks like a goblet, a drinking glass, hence the name goblet cell. Now these goblet cells produce a green sticky substance called mucus, and the function of the mucus is to trap dirt and bacteria. However, mucus is quite nutritious, so the bacteria is rather happy to live in the mucus, so we have to be able to remove that mucus from the lungs. The next cell along is a ciliated epithelial cell. Epithelial means sort of outside or skin cell, so this is coating the outside of your trachea, that's touching the air. And you'll notice it has a number of projections here called cilia, and the cilia work together and sort of move and waft the mucus up and out of the lungs, so we can remove all that trapped dirt and bacteria. The next cell on our list is the nerve cells, sometimes called the neurons, and these nerve cells will have a very long thin axon, this shape here. And the job of that axon is to carry nerve impulses quickly from one nerve cell to another nerve cell, from one neuron to another neuron. So in order to connect with a large number of neurons, at the end of each neuron we have a large number of these things called dendrites to make connections with other nerve cells. The axon, where we need to have an electronic nerve impulse travelling quickly, is insulated by a tissue known as myelin sheath. This is actually a group of cells known as swan cells, which sort of wrap themselves around the axon of the nerve cell, producing many layers of cell membrane. Cell membrane is sort of formed from a similar molecule to fat, so it works to insulate the cell and keep the electrical nerve impulses inside traveling very quickly. The nerve cells can also connect to muscle fibers, which will help the muscles contract, and these nerve endings here will be able to connect one nerve cell to many muscle fibers and many muscle cells. Nerves will end at a gap called the synapse. Nerves don't touch each other, there's just this tiny little gap between them known as the synapse. So the end of a nerve cell will contain a large amount of mitochondria to produce energy from respiration, and the energy is used to synthesize neurotransmitter chemicals, which can then cross the synapse and pass on electrical nerve impulses to the next cell. So these nerve cells are highly specialized and well adapted to their functions. The next cell on our list is the muscle cell. Now, the function of a muscle cell is simply to contract and relax. When a muscle cell contracts, it gets shorter but wider, and when it relaxes, it gets longer and narrower. In order to do this, the cytoplasm contains special contracting proteins that allow the cell to shorten and contract, or elongate and relax. The cells contain mitochondria to produce energy, again from respiration, and the energy is used by the cell's chemical reactions that control the contraction of the cell. The cell will also store a chemical known as glycogen. Glycogen is a similar chemical to starch, and it's a carbohydrate that can be quickly broken down into glucose, which can then be used in respiration to release the energy that can be used to make the cells shorten and contract. The next cell on our list is the fat cells. And the cytoplasm of a fat cell is filled with large fat droplets. Now, fat is a reserve of energy. It's an energy store. It's also an insulator. So it will only ever be used if the body really needs it. So if you have a high fat diet, then your cells beneath the skin, the fat cells, will be instructed to store large droplets of fat for future use. Two of the more well-known specialized cells in the human body are the egg cell and the sperm cell. The egg cell is the largest cell in the human body, and the sperm cell is the smallest cell in the human body. Both sperm and egg cells have a haploid nucleus. This means they have only half the normal number of chromosomes in their nucleus. In the case of humans, that means they have 23 chromosomes rather than the more usual 23 pairs, or a total of 46. So the egg cell is well adapted to its function. It contains a large amount of nutrients in the cytoplasm for the growing embryo, and it also has a special cell membrane which will change and harden after fertilization to prevent more than one sperm entering. The egg cell only wishes to be fertilized by one single sperm cell. Sperm cells have a tail. That's the most obvious adaptation that they have, is to have a tail to help them swim to the egg cell. They also have a special area at the front of the cell here known as the acrosome, which has enzymes that will help to digest the outer layer of an egg cell. In fact, in this picture here, you can see a large number of sperm cells trying to release those enzymes from the acrosome and digest through the outer layers of the egg cell and enter through the cell membrane, and therefore fertilize the egg cell. Sperm cells also have a central area here known as the middle piece that contains a large number of mitochondria, which will be respiring and providing energy for the movement of the tail. The next cells on our list are the white blood cells, and they will provide immunity and keep you safe from disease by destroying microbes, particularly pathogenic microbes like pathogenic bacteria, fungi or viruses. There's two basic types of white blood cell, the phagocytes and the lymphocytes. You can tell the difference by looking at the shape of the nucleus. Phagocytes have this sort of strangely lobed nucleus, whereas lymphocytes have a very large circular nucleus. So a phagocyte is a very flexible cell, and it will surround and digest any microbes, and this process is known as phagocytosis. Lymphocytes, on the other hand, with their large nucleus controlling a large amount of protein synthesis, will produce lots and lots of antibodies which will be utilized to destroy the bacteria. And the antibodies will stay in your body, in your blood, for the foreseeable future, protecting you from any bacteria, any pathogens that might enter your body in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned a lot about a range of different specialised cells that we have. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to comment below and tell me what you've learnt, what you enjoyed, and please support the channel by liking and subscribing.